Today's workshop will be facilitated by Anita Córdova, a bilingual organizational development expert and the founder of Transformative Strategies, LLC. With over 15 years of experience leading change across public, private, and nonprofit sectors, Anita specializes in inclusive leadership, strategic planning, and data-informed training that centers equity and impact. She has secured over $170 million in funding, led statewide technical assistance initiatives, and pioneered innovations like New Mexico's first Homeless Mortality Review. Known for her participatory, strengths-based approach, Anita empowers CCSS professionals with practical, justice-driven tools to deliver high-quality, culturally responsive care, especially in housing, recovery, and bilingual services. With that, I'd love to hand it over to Miss Anita. Are you ready to go?
I am. Thank you, Sabrina. I appreciate that introduction. Buenas tardes y bienvenidos. Good afternoon and welcome. I am thrilled to share this time with you. Voices that Heal is a passion topic of mine that has long guided my practice, my community, and my family. I am Anita Córdova. I come from a long line of New Mexicans who have been unwavering in their dedication to their culture and their language. They have passed it on to me in the ways that they best could. For nearly 2 decades, I have been dedicated to helping develop and design a responsive system for New Mexicans in need of care. I come to you today with that same commitment and dedication. I hope you will too. Before we dive in, I'm curious and want to know who is in the room with us today to understand and to honor you. They are going to pull up a poll here in a few minutes, and I'd like you to please respond to that poll. You will be selecting the responses that best describe you today. A heritage learner or speaker is if you grew up with another language in your family or in your home. Learner is someone who is actively learning or building bilingual skills. Curious if you are exploring language out of genuine interest. And multiple if you have more than one of those going on. I will pause for a moment, give you some time to populate the poll. And if you have any questions, I am trying to watch chat as well. And if you need me to repeat those, just place repeat in chat and I will do that. Okay, I will go ahead and repeat just one more time. Heritage, if you grew up with another language in your family or home. Learner, if you're actively learning or building bilingual skills. Curious, if you are exploring language out of genuine interest. And multiple, if more than one of these describe you as you show up today. All right, wonderful. This is great. I'm seeing 34% heritage, 17% learner, 29% curious, and 20% multiple. That's those of us in the room today. Thank you for sharing a little bit about yourself. That matters for how we do this work. Now, I want to engage in an experiential activity with you. In order to effectively communicate, you must first be present and to bring your best self, have high energy and vulnerability. Today, I ask you to join me in being present. Am I seeing that someone can't hear me? Let me turn up my volume. 1 second.
I can hear you personally loud and clear, Anita, so I would just
Okay.
invite our learners to up their volumes on their computer.
Excellent. Thank you, Sabrina.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're going to start. Please start with taking a deep breath, shake out your arms, wiggle your toes, or if you're in a space and able to stand up and shake your body gently to generate needed energy for good communication. We will be here for 2 hours together. It's important. Next, I would like you to please close your eyes. Imagine you are in a hospital. You are in pain. You need help. The provider is speaking to you, but they are not speaking in the language that would make you feel safest. The language your family uses, the language that feels like home. Maybe it's Spanish. Maybe it's Dene. Maybe it's a language you are learning. Maybe it's one you wish you had kept. And in that moment of vulnerability, you do not just need English, you need to be seen in your whole self. What do you feel? Open your eyes when you are ready. Okay, that's what your clients, your family members, your neighbors feel every day. Some of you in this room grew up with heritage languages, Spanish, indigenous languages, other languages. That language is part of your identity. When systems do not honor it, it hurts in a specific way. Some of you are learning a language right now. You understand the power of expanding into another linguistic identity. You see what it takes to truly belong in a bilingual space. Both of you, all of you, are doing justice work when you honor language. Whether it's your heritage language or one you're choosing to learn, the work is the same, creating space where people do not have to shrink to fit into English only systems. Today, we are going to learn how to do that. We're going to be the people who say, who you are matters. I see you. And we are going to heal through language. Next slide, please. We have 3 things we're going to do together today. We're going to identify the barriers your clients face, learn communication strategies that build trust, and practice the skills that center respect for bilingual identity. We will first develop a foundation for our time together. Then we will discuss barriers and strategies to overcome those barriers. After that, we will shift to practice and we will end with advocacy for voices that heal. These are not abstract skills. They are the difference between someone staying engaged in care or disappearing. Throughout today's workshop, I'm going to ask you to respond in chat a lot. Bear with me. Not to perform, but to think, to teach back, which is a communication skill used to check understanding in bilingual conversations. That means to share what you understand from the conversation, to build on each other's ideas. Your voice matters to me and to your peers on the call today. Use the language you are most comfortable with, and you can ask each other if you have questions. Today, we will intentionally play with language. If someone speaks in Spanish and we're not interpreting it on purpose, in chat or a comment. We will interpret comments, but we'll let them say it. I invite people to speak in Spanish or another language first, and then we will ask questions and translate, because we are intentionally here to fill space with potentially a moment of awkwardness or a moment of excitement as you hear a language that you may have heard at home and not use every day. Go at your own pace. So if you hear something and it catches up with you later and we're 3 slides back, put it in the chat. Timing does not matter. We're here to have a conversation. It is always the right time to share what you are hearing, what you know, and that is how we will learn together. Next slide, please. Language is not neutral. Language carries power. Language can heal or harm. In 1968, thousands of Chicano students from 5 East LA schools walked out, demanding bilingual education, cultural representation, more Chicano teachers, and they demanded an end to punishment for speaking Spanish. I know that many of us we saw in our poll have grown up listening to our grandparents, our parents, our community talking about being punished for their language, their heritage, their identity. Language revitalization is reclaiming, is resisting, is powerful. My hope is that by the end of this training, you will see bi or multilingual communication not as a problem to solve, but as a relationship to build. Next slide, please. In New Mexico, we have our own history. We have constitutional protections for bilingual juries that date back to 1881. And we have the Bilingual Multicultural Education Act, passed in 1973 because people fought for it, and many other examples that we will not have time to dive into today. Whether you are here today out of desire to use more of your bilingual tongues in service to others, or to be a better user and advocate of translation and interpretation services for your clients, or simply out of curiosity, you understand the power of language and recognize that it is an asset, not a deficit. Next slide, please. Early U.S. education policy enforced English-only instruction, contributing to cultural and linguistic erasure, particularly for Indigenous and Latino communities. New Mexico's Constitution and subsequent laws uniquely protect Spanish and Indigenous languages, reflecting long-standing bilingual and multicultural realities. New Mexico's language history is people-driven. Indigenous, Chicano, and bilingual communities shaped education and governance through lived resistance, not just legislation. Let's begin with our practice in chat. I actually see it's quite active already. I love this. Let's use chat to rewrite the conditions you see on the slide. But here, I want you to add in the words, 2 to 3 words that change them to a healthcare and social services centric conditions. So for example, Chicano children received inferior access to care, or are labeled non-compliant as a result of language access barriers. Again, please post in chat the conditions you see on the slide. You can simply rewrite a statement there, but using healthcare and social services. Next slide, please. As I move to another slide, please do not stop entering stuff in chat. That is what we will be doing here today, and any time is the right time to make a comment in chat in this conversation this afternoon. New Mexico is also fortunate to share community with 23 tribes, 8 tribal languages. New Mexico protects our tribal languages. That's why you can too. Approximately 7,000 New Mexican students participate in tribal language programs in our schools today. This is our future workforce. Next slide, please. We have constitutional protections for bilingual juries that date back to 1881, as described earlier, and we have the Multicultural Education Act passed in 1973 because people fought for it. The 1973 Act was a significant step affirming New Mexico's commitment to bilingualism and multiculturalism in New Mexico. I ask you, and place this in chat, your thoughts or ideas. What would it look like to affirm this same commitment in social services and healthcare? I'm just pausing for a moment to look at the chat, and I'm not seeing as many responses as I would like. So I'm going to remind you, we are here to participate, to show up, and to bring our energy. That is practicing communication, it's practicing teach back, and these are all skills essential as we work to be voices to heal in our communities. So I'll repeat my question and then we'll go to the next slide. What would it look like to affirm this commitment in social services and healthcare to bilingualism and multiculturalism? Next slide, please. Thank you for those of you using chat to share your ideas. Keep it up. And also, I encourage you to respond with reactions. They have become quite fun as our Zoom world has moved on to people's comments, to learn something from the chat, to show you see them, and to keep your energy high. I know it seems like we've been doing this forever. We're 6 years in, but this really is how we communicate in 2026. I encourage you to continue to practice with it. I know it feels a little awkward, send a heart or emoji or a thumbs up. It does not feel professional, perhaps. In our world today, it is. It's a way we are using nonverbal, because you are not speaking, communication skills to talk to each other. Okay, although this slide covers mandates from the Yazzie Martinez case, this is what it could look like if New Mexico affirmed this commitment to bilingualism and multiculturalism in health and social services too. Notice for a moment the requirement for social services in schools. How can we do this if we are not also voices that heal? Also notice how the ruling is preparing our current and future student base if you are fortunate enough to work in a school-based or adjacent setting. Next slide, please. In this slide, I say, or to this slide, I say, and counting. I am confident that these numbers do not acknowledge the full extent of our bilingual community in New Mexico. Together, including our native language numbers from earlier slides, they make up your clients. That is why we are here. Let me give you an example of why I say and counting. Even in our earlier poll, we had about 32% heritage and about 20% who were other, meaning they were multiple of our options. That there is around 53% of the people on this call today, which we're at about 79 right now, who have some bilingual language skills. Growing up in New Mexico, I, like many of you, did not learn about bi or multilingualism in a textbook. I learned it in my neighborhood, in my kitchen, from my friends, and from the families who welcomed me into their homes. My father's first language was Spanish. My mother's was English. Family friends spoke native languages like Dene. Language and culture were as present as the tortillas on our table. Language is our identity. It's how we make sense of the world. When we honor a client's and our own home language, we are sending the message that we see them, that we value them, and that they belong here. When we do that, we also see ourselves. We value ourselves. We belong here. This is our community. Next slide, please. And I'm just going to take a moment to pause and enjoy the chat. It's going so fast, I can't keep up with it. Thank you for sharing. But here's the thing. Policy is not practice. Laws say bilingual education is allowed, but not all schools offer it. Laws say you can have an interpreter, but sometimes there's no one available. Laws say your language is protected, but not all staff act like it. That gap, that's where our work happens. Next slide, please.
Anita, there's a question in here in the chat about, do you feel that for those who either don't speak Spanish or speak poorly, that real-time translation apps help or hinder communication?
That's an excellent question. And I would say to that both. If you are not using it with intention and coming to the table practicing your own language and being open to that awkward exchange, it can hinder. Yet, if you're using it as a tool for your as we're going to talk about right now, actually, internalized for your healing your internalized barriers and your clients, it can be a tool. Thank you, Sarah, for calling that out. All right. Speaking of barriers, great segue actually to the person who asked the question and Sarah for stopping me there. Let's examine these types of barriers. They are the lens for everything we are doing today. On the left, you'll see structural barriers. That's systems, infrastructures, policies, how the machine is built. This is about the system, not individual people. In the middle column, we have interpersonal barriers, are where your presence makes an immediate difference. Most of these do not come from malice. They come from speed, pressure, and assumptions. Not asking about language choice, or as we're learning here today, language spoken at home. We know here that those can be different and that difference matters. Like that hidden bueno bye. We are often doing our best in systems that were never designed for bilingual care. Think back to the historic demands in education for bilingual access we discussed earlier. But even small shifts, pausing longer, asking instead of assuming, facing the client instead of the interpreter, these change everything. They add up to big gains in trust and relationship building. Our final column are internalized barriers. This is what our clients and you, in many cases, carry from a lifetime of living in systems that devalued their language. The belief their Spanish isn't proper, the fear that they are slower in their language, the belief that speaking Spanish is unprofessional, the fear of judgment, self-policing, hiding how they really talk. Today, we will embrace the antidote to internalized shame, and that is relational safety, not linguistic perfection.
Anita, while we're on that topic, there was a question posed by Erin around, let me find it, whether or not we think apps will hinder learning a new language. There's a good conversation in the chat that internal barrier around fear could lead people to use apps more, and if we see that hindering the learning of a new language.
That's an excellent question. Thanks again, Sarah, for pausing me here. Again, you might not like my answer, but I'm going to say both, right? What we're learning here today, it's how we show up in the world. It's how we choose to communicate. I'll give you an example. I've started using AI to help me. I'll write something in Spanish and I'll put it in AI to translate it for me. And at first, that was just, I was like, oh, look how easy this is. And then I realized because I am committed, deeply passionate about my Spanish language, I decided that wasn't going to suffice to me. But what I've done is I've met in the middle. It helps me learn. I challenge myself. I write first what I want to say, and then I let it correct me. And that gives me power. And so, yes, tools, our technology tools today can do both. They can help and they can hinder. And to that, I say, keep playing with it, figure it out, come to the table with intention, curiosity, and drive to learn. Again, for you and the person you're trying to communicate with. And that will help you learn how to use the tools and guide you in your development of that use over time. You're going to run into moments where you misuse it or overuse it or underuse it. And then when you get your groove, it will become a part of your bilingual learning journey. So thank you. Great question. And keep riffing on that in chat if others have comments. It's a good conversation in our world today. All right, back to our 3 barriers that create these gaps. All 3 happen simultaneously. Imagine a client walks into a clinic and immediately is faced with structural barriers in the waiting room. Interpersonal barriers from how staff greets them, internalized barriers they carry from their own history. Your job, and this is important, your job is not to fix all 3 alone. That is not your burden. Systemic barriers are not your fault. Your job is to name which one you are looking at and ask, which one can I shift in this moment? That structural barrier, you might need to advocate for a form in Spanish. That interpersonal barrier, you can slow down. And that internalized barrier, you can say, your language is a skill. You are not slower. You are bilingual. That's power. That's agency. That's impact. Next slide, please. So we know the barriers. Now, what does responsive communication actually look like? Cultural and linguistic responsiveness is not just translation, as we were talking about earlier. It is not just hiring bilingual staff. It is a relational practice. It includes power awareness. It includes identity, respect, your client's identity, and your own. It is about shared meaning making. Next slide, please. Power dynamics in service relationships ask these important questions. Who chooses the language? Who controls the pace? Who owns the format? When a client walks in and the front desk immediately assumes English, you have answered that question. When you speak faster because you are efficient, you have answered that question. When you hand them a form and say, fill this out without other instruction or communication engagement, you have answered that question. Next slide, please. Let's reframe this core myth that I mentioned earlier. Language choice increases psychological safety. Identity recognition increases trust. Trust improves outcomes. Therefore, language is not a barrier. Language indeed is connection, healing, and safety. My passion for voices that heal reminds me of the following Gabor Mate quote. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It is connection. And that makes me think of how much our service delivery models under focus on connection. Next slide, please. And with that, I'm just going to take a brief second to connect in the chat because so much is going on in there. Wonderful. It's really exciting to see you all communicate with each other and reacting to each other's comments. I hope that that helps you feel connected to this space, to our topic, and to each other. Evidence shows when there's a language mismatch, utilization goes down. When clients have language control, trust goes up. Bilingual interactions lead to better disclosure and better adherence. So the question is not, how do we get clients to understand English faster? The question is, how do we shift power so clients feel seen and can engage at their best? Here is where we anchor values in outcomes, not ideology. And this is why using any language skills you may have with humility will create higher trust and connection, measured by better disclosure and adherence. And what we all want, better health, better well-being. Next slide, please. I am realizing we are ahead of ourselves. And so I am going to pause and actually give some of you who are really lighting up the chat there a moment to jump in and ask a question, make a comment, and let's dig in a little bit deeper on some of the questions or the conversation you've been having in chat, because I have been out of it. So any person who wants to use their verbal communication skills, please come off mute and talk to us about anything you might have put in chat at this point that you'd like to riff on for a second.
Hi, good morning here in New Mexico. Good afternoon to those of you guys in other time zones. I was gonna type this out, but in relation to the last thing that you had talked about, I was working in Delaware for the last year before moving back to New Mexico, and as a hospital case manager, and I had a patient who was from Haiti and spoke Haitian Creole, and I have some experience with some slang and general pronunciation between, it's very similar to French, but it has some of its other, I guess, je ne sais quoi, I guess you could say. And I was able to, we utilize the language line to communicate with patients. But to kind of preface the situation to introduce myself, I used Google Translate to, basically create just a small script where I could kind of meet with the client, and use like a respectful term like madame, which is like Mrs., as a term of respect in order to set that relationship. And even though we finished using, like I said, a translator and a translation service, I was able to kind of show that I was willing to kind of meet them where they are and acknowledge who they were as a person, through their language. And it was very helpful.
And how did that feel for you, Jamie?
It was really good. I mean, I used to live in Florida, and I picked up a fair amount of Creole and stuff, and so just being able to kind of just use some of just the pronunciation, but also, like I said, being able to help this woman and her family, really feel like they weren't, and it took a while. They had a lot of questions, but I was able to kind of cover a lot of topics because I had, I think, opened the door and started that, more collaborative approach, I guess. But it felt good, yeah.
An excellent example. And how do you think the family received that? And how do you know they received that?
Well, they smiled and laughed, and were very, the dynamic between like working with some of the nurses who maybe weren't as, who they also use the translation service, but I guess, I developed a rapport and just the way that they were, they thanked me very much and, they, blessed me basically, things like that. Yeah, you just like I said, just could tell by the way they were talking and her children and her sister and things like that for this patient.
Wonderful. One final question, Jamie, and then I'll let you get off the hot seat here. What did they accomplish what you were helping them with, or what they had hoped to accomplish by coming to see you that day or that time frame?
Yeah, so they pretty much, yeah, they were having some kind of cardiac issues and they had already been linked up with a cardiologist, but I guess there was like a miscommunication about some follow-up procedures, and so the patient wasn't able, didn't understand initially prior to coming into the hospital that they had some other things to follow up with. And so I don't know if like the cardiologist or their office didn't really explain things, and so I was able to kind of really do some care coordination and some kind of follow-up things to make sure they understood like, where they had to go and, what further testing they needed to do in an outpatient setting. So I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, that's an amazing example of voices that heal, and no doubt you made an impact on a whole, it sounds like a whole family's life in those interactions. Thanks for sharing, Jamie. I really appreciate you coming off mute and doing that with us this afternoon.
No
Anyone
problem.
else want to make a comment before we move on? We really are slightly ahead of time, I'm excited to say, and you've all been doing so much of this training, talking to each other in chat.
I just wanted to share that this is Roxanne from Albuquerque. A couple of days ago, I needed to do an intake and it was on telehealth. And I noticed that the client was Spanish speaker. And I grew up with a heritage, right? Learning from my parents and grandparents, mainly my grandparents. So I know some, I could get by, but there's words in the intake that I don't know how to translate. And especially if it's a Mexican descent, they have different words than we do in this, speaking Hispanic or Spanish. But I was able to pair up with a bilingual person in Santa Fe, and we were able to help the client. And it felt good because he was coming into a situation that he was unsure of, and you could tell he was nervous about it. But at the end, you could just feel him like his shoulders relaxing and smiling because he understood what was going on and what was going to happen, the next steps. So that was nice seeing that.
That's amazing example. Yes, thank you. You bring up a few things in that conversation, Roxanne. Uh, whether it's Spanish or English, so many people, and we also heard this from Jamie, speak different dialects. And so playing with language, teaming up, as you just described, are amazing examples of trying to make sure that everybody is communicating in the same way. And I was just asked to check my my speaker, and they're both set up to my headphones, so I am not sure. Let me see. Let me try this. For those of you having trouble hearing me, is this any better for you?
Still sounds about the same. I would suggest if you have an alternative mic option, there's that caret next to your mic button, and just maybe toggle between one of the other options. Maybe
That
use
is what
this.
I'm doing. So how's that? Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And I do see some saying they hear perfectly. So we'll just keep pushing through, and stop me if someone doesn't understand something or didn't hear it. I'm happy to repeat myself. I'm very flexible with starts and stops and interruptions and questions. So we'll use that to our benefit today. All right. Not seeing anyone else want to come off and connect. Thank you, Roxanne and
Anita,
Jamie.
there was a hand up from Mireya.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Go for it.
Hi, hola, señora Córdova.
Hola. Gracias.
This is Córdova.
Yo como intérprete, desde el 2012 he notado la diferencia.
As an interpreter, since 2012, I've noticed a difference in interpreting for patients. So I see this as an opportunity to improve, and there have been a lot of changes in improvement with interpretation over the telephone or by video. So we're making a lot of progress, but I still think that there are a lot of things that could improve. There are many private practices or smaller practices where they feel that interpretation isn't something that's necessary, that they think they can just use Google Translate, or they can use family members or kids to interpret for them, but many times they don't understand the terminology. And then this creates trust problems, and the person who doesn't have technology can interpret things in a wrong way or in the wrong context. But I think that all the language services should be mandatory, or there should be an incentive so that every practice should offer them for those patients that need it. And, you know, as I worked for such a long time as an interpreter, I've noticed how people's lives can be completely changed because of the interpretation services. And I've worked recently with a person who speaks Spanish, but they cannot hear. So we were able to find an application, an app that was useful for them to make phone calls in their own language. And that is one of the greatest achievements that I hold very close to my heart. Thank you for your commentary.
Not speak Spanish, since that was a large conversation. Feel free to click your globe and change it to English just for a moment. And if our interpreters will repeat that, I will go ahead and respond in English. I am not an interpreter, but I can explain what was said and what I heard. So, but for those of you who are very concerned with understanding word for word what you just heard, take advantage of the language buttons on our technology platform today, and our interpreters who are here with us today. So thank you, Mireya. So you can see, even as a bilingual person, I can struggle as I switch through language. So she brought up a number of important and significant points that we have covered and will cover today. The use of technology and how sometimes interpretation and translation is seen as less of a gift today, and people are relying more on Google Translate and other tools. sounds great, perhaps, but there are technology challenges with our population. And then we have age differences where maybe young kids don't want, may not speak the same, may not use the technology. Older folks, same situation. All that to say, and Mireya, I hope that I'm not butchering this because I'm doing my interpretation of that. All that to say is it's a dance, is what I heard, and what she, in her long experience of being an interpreter, it's a dance of how we use new technology, of how we use voices to heal and use bicultural and multiculturalism and our strategies across generations, intergenerationally, multi-generationally. It is a dance and there's nothing easy about it. And I really appreciate your comments, Mireya. That is helping us to understand exactly what we're doing here today. Language, bilingual and multicultural linguistic skills, however you fall in that continuum. And as Mireya just described, it's a gigantic continuum, especially now with technology. It's one to be honored. It's one to continue to learn and perfect, continue to advocate for, and to continue to utilize. And as I'm sure Mireya and many of her clients have experienced, as myself, right? It's one to fail at over and over again, because when do we get better? When we've failed, when we've had struggles, when we have asked for help on something we don't know. I mean, I'll just give this conversation about my mic. I saw some comments in here with some people trying to problem solve in the chat and help people connect to different audio outputs. That's communication. That's community. That's struggles with technology. And that's just one simple example. And it didn't even include necessarily, or maybe it did. I'm making an assumption about who were the 5 having audio problems, but it might not have even included bilingual or multicultural challenges. So yes, thank you so much, Mireya, for that example and that comment. You're exactly right. This is complex. I also noticed that the next training Invive is giving the month after this has similar content. And I encourage you to participate in that, because this is not a one-off. It's something we will continue to do for the rest of our lives if we continue to remain curious learners, practice our bilingual or heritage abilities, and or all of the above. Thank you all. With that, I better get back on track, and I hope that those of you struggling with audio have had a better experience with that. And if anybody is really curious about word for word what Mireya said and did not access the English, was unable to access English translation, thank you for playing with us and for the language opportunity to feel awkward or uncomfortable. Remember that people who have different lingual skills feel that every day. So thank you for playing and showing up today. All right, I will move on unless there's something, Sarah, if there's anything in chat I need to address.
We are good for now.
Okay, thank you. All right. We are going to move on from concept to practice, and we are going to go from theory to doable behaviors. So for today, bilingual interaction, as we actually just discussed, and thank you for everyone for highlighting that and showing that in real time. Bilingual interaction is broadly used and loosely defined. So think of your neighbors who say bueno bye or órale after they say something, or when they first see you for the day. Or I get teased a lot for saying get down from the car. I guess the more English dominant, accurate phrase is get out of the car. And so these are unique New Mexico isms, right? The simple use of some words or a full-on bilingual conversation, a language you know, or one you do not, a native or Pueblo prayer to kick off a meeting. All of this represents concept in action for us. So with that, continue to share your practices or ones you would like to see around your bilingualism in chat, or ways you can use language to bring into a conversation. And again, I will thank the comments from Jamie, Mireya, and Roxanne for helping us see that in real time. Next slide, please. Here, we can see the professional value of our voices, that using our voices to heal. What other opportunities or outcomes of addressing internalized barriers are not listed on our screen here? Again, you can drop them into chat as they come to mind. I hope you're not tired of me saying drop them into chat. Again, I'm just really loving this community, loving the knowledge. I like to run my workshops as a mastermind. I have a lot of information. I love to share it and I love to learn. But you all come to the table today with information, experience, knowledge, and practices that many of us might not have seen, experienced, or shared with others. So thank you for playing and using chat to participate. I'm seeing the comments in there. This is really great. Really helps us understand the opportunities of addressing internalized barriers. All right. With that, we can go on to the next slide, please. All right, let's get to some real talk. I know that it's really easy to talk about the benefits. I know this is really important to me. And for me, I really find this to be an important topic that we should all engage in. However, and as we heard, Mireya really addressed some of these in real time with us. Addressing factors that hinder access and communication are not simply activities to check off a list. It requires intention, vulnerability, and failure. It can feel like a heavy lift, but as you practice, you will need to use all the tools, as we were talking about earlier, working on your internalized barriers, your interpersonal skills, and your systems towards written documentation, interpretation, technology, and more. But it is what allows us to play with language and create connection. Again, and connection is what heals, right? If it is a language you know nothing about, as we heard Jamie describe a little bit, ask the client to teach you a greeting or learn a word that reminds them of home, and then practice it. Or if you learn a phrase from their language, seek permission to use it with them. But always be genuine, be interested, be open. That's what allows us to connect. It helps them feel heard, seen, and importantly, relatable. You pushed yourself past the awkward moment in that exchange, which is something they have to do regularly. And I am realizing that's just a repetition of what we already discussed. And that just means we're all on the right track for our learning today. It's exciting. Thank you. Let's, next slide, please. This is where our intention and our learning is going to be put into action, and we're going to practice our skills. Most of the harm in our bilingual communication does not come from malice. It comes from speed, pressure, and assumptions. As we see here on this slide, small shifts can become big gains in how we communicate and the outcomes for our clients. And we're looking and seeking presence over perfection. In particular, for those of us who are learning or who are practicing with our heritage language, as Roxanne was describing, there are a number of words we can use. We speak one way, others speak in another way. That takes time and effort to use. It's going to feel awkward, but that's going to get you much further than coming to the table with a perfect language skill. Having said that, we must acknowledge here that I'm not talking about interpretation or translation in and of itself. That is a professional practice, dedicated, expert level, and we don't have to be there, but it is one we must acknowledge, honor, and continue to advocate for having in our systems because it is essential. Next slide, please. Common pitfalls. These are the things that make our life lovely, right? Common pitfalls to linguistically responsive communications frequently result from structural and interpersonal barriers. Our systems, as we've discussed, reward efficiency, but dignity requires us to slow down, to be present. Some of those skills that we're practicing here today, both in chat and coming off mute to share together. not described here, are the internalized barriers many New Mexicans struggle with. For example, wishing we spoke better Spanish, wanting to use our native languages, and holding ourselves back. These also create communication barriers. These examples on the slides in front of us represent verbal communication pitfalls. Can you share in chat, please, some examples of non-verbal communication pitfalls? For example, looking at a clock or your phone, sudden shifts to paperwork, waving hands to interrupt. I'll give a little example here of a nonverbal communication skill that we do use to communicate with each other in New Mexico, and it's very cultural or linguistically centered. Kind of when we, you all know this, right? When we point with our lips, when someone says, "Where is something?" right? Or when we nod our head at somebody. These are nonverbal cues that communicate with people, and they're an important part of us addressing bi and multiculturalism. It helps us practice those communication skills beyond words, and they are important. Next slide, please. I'm seeing some great examples in here. Tapping the foot. Yes. How many of us have been in a conversation and people are tapping their foot and waiting for us to be done talking, right? Great examples. Stance, eye contact, arm positioning, proximity. Ooh, that's a good one. How many of you have been in a situation where you can actively feel people kind of backing up from you when a tense moment, in particular around language, occurs? Thank you. Keep up the chat, and remember to react to each other and embrace that awkwardness as well in chat. Clients, as we see here, code shifting, and we're going to talk about code switching and client dignity. Clients may switch languages on us depending on their emotion, the topic, or the power dynamics at play. That's not inconsistency, right? That's strategy. That's our bilingual intelligence. When this happens, you can mirror them, or you can simply acknowledge what they are doing and reframe code switching from a failure to a skill. Our role here, as people seeking to use our voices to heal, is to follow their lead, honor their language choices, yours and theirs, without judgment. Next slide, please. When we use our voices to heal, and the interpreter is an essential part of our care team, but the client is always centered. And that, as you all know, many of you know on the call today, that takes discipline. Clear communication requires intention and practice. These skills and practices we have discussed address our interpersonal barriers and internalized barriers. For example, when you ask about language preferences, you are removing the barrier of assumption. When you pause and wait, you are removing the barrier of rush. In my personal and professional experience, true transformation happens at the internalized barrier. And again, in my opinion, especially here in New Mexico, specifically when you use a heritage language in code switching, you build that communication and that connections that heal. Next slide, please. All right, we are right on time. It's exciting. Okay, before we practice, I want us to take 30 seconds. Put your hand on your heart and breathe. In deeply and exhale slowly. Excellent. We've covered a lot of content. And we've dealt with technology challenges, and we've been lighting up the chat with great conversations, and a couple of us came off mute to have a good discussion. And I need you to stay present as we move into our breakout groups. As a reminder, connecting through communication is about being present and energy. Energy is about movement and breath. So thank you for practicing with me. And you'll remember at the beginning of our conversation when I asked you to shake out your bodies, stand up, maybe you stretch. Those kind of pauses in between help us stay centered in our communication, which is what's going to be essential in pushing through, in particular, if we are having bi or multicultural conversations and we have moments of awkwardness, ours or theirs. And that helps us kind of release that energy to continue to show up as our best selves. Okay, you know the framework, we've discussed it. You know the barriers, you've experienced them, and you know concrete moves. You have the language. In a few moments, you're going to shift to practice with scenarios. In the chat, you will find a link to our impact phrases cheat sheet. These are the things people say when they are honoring bilingual clients. Let me be clear. I know we have experts in this room. You do not have to memorize them. You do not have to say them word for word. But I would encourage you to think of them like a menu. You look, see what resonates, pick what fits. Some of you will use exact phrases. That's okay. That's what they're there for. Some of you will use your own wisdom. Both are valid. These are just thinking tools to help you name what you are doing. And the magic is in the intention behind them, not the words, in your intention behind them. All right, so remember to keep this file open, please. Use it as a thinking tool and ask yourself, what barrier am I assessing? What phrases or approach address it? I will also challenge you to think about what nonverbal communication might be happening in the scenarios you are about to read. Next slide, please. All right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to work in breakout groups. Each group is going to get a specific scenario, a real-ish scenario. Sorry, I got lost where I was at. So you'll read the scenario, you'll get oriented. That'll be the first step. Second step, in your groups, identify the barrier, look at your impact phrases as needed. Ask yourself, what's blocking trust here? Is it structural? Is it systems? Or is it internalized? What the client is carrying from their own history, or what you are carrying from your own history. The third step will be to rewrite one moment from that scenario. Use the impact phrases as a menu, pick what fits or ignore it, and use your gut. Both are right. You have what you need. The point is, what would you say or do to honor this client? Keep your rewrite short, 1 to 2 sentences max. And as a bonus, as I said earlier, I'd like you to explore together in your group what nonverbal communication might have been at play in that scenario. The final step, we will reconvene as a whole group. You will explain to me, which barrier did you rewrite? Which barrier did your rewrite address? A nonverbal communication you imagine might be present, and what you did to fix the barrier. You'll have 10 minutes to complete steps 1 through 3. I will, just to warn you, be floating through the rooms as I can. I'm going to show up just to listen. Of course, if you're stuck, I'm happy to answer any questions. But mostly, I want to hear what you think. Ready? All right, let's go. Okay, so I do not know who was in which scenarios. So I'm going to need volunteers who received the housing intake scenario, please.
Okay, I'm Marisol Hawkins.
Does somebody from the housing intake group want to share what barrier did you identify in your scenario?
On ours, we assumed understanding based on nodding or on a quick yes, especially when the form is in a language the client reads only a little. This puts consent and comprehension at risk. And
Excellent.
we said all three of them mainly, it's put at risk.
Wonderful. Which phrase or approach did you use to address that barrier?
On the don't?
Or the impact phrase sheet, whichever worked for you all.
We put like on the do, I don't understand what you're telling me.
No, that's okay. The task was to rewrite, so I guess let me rephrase that.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay. We put I want to slow down for a moment to make sure this makes sense. Would you prefer we go over this part in Spanish or in English? Okay. And then after that, I explain it. After we explain it, can you tell me in your own words what it means, just so I know I explained it clearly to you?
Excellent. Well done.
Yeah,
and
that's what we got.
Yeah, that's great. Did you identify any nonverbal communications that might have been happening in that scenario?
Yeah, like they weren't comprehending, like, we were assuming, like they were assuming just because the person nodded yes, So on the do, we put pause the intake, acknowledge the language difference, and offer interpretation or a Spanish version of the form. This respects the client's dignity and supports informed consent. Ask them if they understand. And then we put, ask them if they have any questions, engaging more with the client.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Marisol. I appreciate it.
Yes, I was kind of nervous. I'm all stuttering.
Hey, that's all right. That's what we're doing today. So you're right in the right place.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you. All right. Anybody from our next scenario? Let me get to the space where it was. Interpreter session during crisis planning. Which groups had that scenario? Or can I get 2 volunteers? I see Jamie. Thank you, Jamie, for raising your hand to share with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. We didn't actually have a scenario, so we just did the first scenario, which was also the CCSS housing. It was just the 4 of us in the breakout room. So, but we also, like I said, did the CCSS housing scenario. We looked at a few of the different barriers, but the one that we all agreed on was, there was a structural barrier of not having a form in Spanish. And so we did discuss, like, even if someone can understand or speak a language, they may not have the same, like, reading fluency, and written language skills. And so our intervention was to make sure that we did have a Spanish form. And then we did discuss, like, an alternative, which using the not the do's and don'ts, the impact phrases. So we did the second one for language, agency, and choice. So we did, like, the podemos cambiar de idioma en cualquier momento, solo dime. Yo necesito un servicio de transladora, like basically letting them know that we could switch to a different language, but we would have to use, like, a translation service. So
brilliant. I love it. I love it. Thank you. Appreciate that, Jamie. Okay, how about a volunteer from the client switches languages mid-conversation scenario?
Hi, it's Mireya again. Is that the scenario number 3, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, my group did that one. So the barrier that we actually identified on that one was internalized, as the client shut down as soon as the provider said, well, let's just use English right now. So the main things that came up for that one was the power dynamic as well, lack of making the client comfortable. So we were just trying to, we switch the phrases to kind of meet them in the middle. Like, okay, so it seems like you are more comfortable with specific topics in Spanish and on other topics in English. Maybe just make them aware that your preferred in stronger language it's English, so that way you can let them know. It's like if I answer in English, it's just to make sure that I'm answering the best way. But of course, when it's necessary, they can switch to English. I'm sorry, to Spanish. And if there is some, if the provider doesn't feel comfortable in Spanish, then maybe offer the interpreting services so they can fully understand it. And it's interpreted the best way for, to help them with understanding and clarity. And so that's I don't know if anybody wants from my group to add anything to that.
I think I was in her group as well, and I think it was definitely addressing the power dynamic. Also another thing that I think we also talked about, which was inviting the client to feel comfortable with like affirming, hey, like whatever language you choose is what we're going to go with. Your voice in this scenario is the most important thing that we're going to, we're going with that. So definitely we utilize the impact sheet for, like, I think it was number 7, as far as like those affirming responses and allowing the client to feel comfortable with whatever it is that they felt necessary. So definitely utilizing that to make it more comfortable. And I think that's how we kind of rewrote the whole the step 4, so that way the client felt comfortable and we were actually achieving a goal.
That's amazing. Thanks, Mireya and Edith, for sharing with us. Great work. Okay, we have our final scenario 4. I didn't know that the numbers were on there. That makes my life easier. So scenario 4, written notice followed by verbal explanation. Can we get a volunteer or 2 to talk about that scenario? The barrier identified and the rewrite you did, or what you did, or to say differently. What you did, you say and do differently.
Ese fue el de nosotros. Lo que nosotros también encontramos fue que en la estructura y en la infraestructura del sistema no se tienen los formatos en español, y que un error sería
one error would be to assume that the client, just because they read a little English, that they're going to understand everything that the form says that they have to complete. It would be a mistake to assume that the client, even if they have that small capacity of understanding a bit of a language that isn't their first language, is going to understand and not be confused, because they're important papers that they're going to have to sign. So a measure to follow would be, before the appointment with that client, it would be good to have it would be good to find a way for them to complete the form before the appointment, and then request the interpretation services within enough time, so that when they meet with the client, they have all the components in place, including the interpretation services. And also not assume that everything is understood, because we wouldn't be complying with the state regulations of presenting the interpretation services to any client that requests it. So yes, we need to improve the forms and have them in both English and Spanish, so that we can provide our clients the best service possible. I would like to ask my peers who are in the same group with me if they would like to share something that I didn't. Thank you, Angie. That was a really good example of that scenario.
If our interpreter wants to go ahead and interpret a little bit of what she said for us, please, or just maybe not interpret.
I already interpreted.
Passed, just do a quick debrief for the rest of the group.
I already interpreted.
So she was interpreting simultaneously on the English channel. So I think if learners were able to change to that channel, they would have heard what she had said. So I think we can.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, keep going.
Perfect. Even better. Thank you all. I love having this team. Makes life so much easier. Those were excellent examples and responses. Good work. I hope that practicing with that will give you the confidence you need to, or you would like to do some of this work into the future, more of this work that you're obviously already doing. Next slide, please. Okay, so obviously, right, active listening is not just about saying the right thing. It's about how we show up while someone is saying something hard, especially across language differences. And we heard a lot of that in our scenario descriptions today. You all clearly showed up to do the hard work. I appreciate that. Listening itself, as you heard, is a clinical, relational, and ethical intervention, and is why we practice this and why we're talking about it today. Next slide, please. Many of you today in our call today deal with trauma. Trauma and language differences overlap, and that overlap creates comprehensive delays and slows that experience of comprehension. That is not resistance. That's the nervous system doing its job. Our role is to regulate ourselves first so that we can help regulate them as well when they are in those moments. Next slide, please. Trauma-informed listening is regulating ourselves. It is intentional pacing. We heard many of you describe that in your scenarios. It's constantly asking yourself, is my presence making this moment safer or heavier? It is also an important form of non-verbal communication. Next slide, please. We're going to just take 2 or 3 minutes here. You're going to do this work at your own pace and amongst yourself or with yourself. You're going to do a self-assessment of your individual active listening style. Don't overthink it. Let's just roll with it. After a moment of self-reflection and looking at this slide, rank your answers on a scale of 1 to 10 for each of the questions on the slide. Then add up your total number and place your result into the chat. No judgment here. We just want to see where everybody is at. So we'll take just 2 minutes to do that. Marisol, can I answer a question for you?
Yeah, it's not letting me put my number in the chat. I keep clicking on the chat. It's not letting me click on it.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Do you want to just share it with us?
Yeah, I scored a 28.
That's pretty good. How do you feel about that?
I feel kind of nervous. Like I feel like I have a lot of more work to do on like trying to understand another person and not jump in and interrupt them. That's mainly where I have problems with.
Well, if it helps you feel any better, Marisol, a lot of us have that struggle.
The last one.
Oh, there was the lag. See, I just did it. Thank you for sharing. And as you can see, everyone who is putting their numbers into chat, no one's perfect. And many of us have room to grow. I encourage you to identify just one to work on, like the one Marisol described, right? Over the next 30 days. It can be your lowest score, or it can simply be one that you've been wanting to work at for a long time. Remember, we can't change everything at once, and some of our challenges will always be with us. It doesn't make us good or bad. It just makes us have an opportunity to improve. So pick one thing and work on it a little bit over the next 30 days. 1% shifts, a little change every day, adds up to big gains over time. So I encourage you to play around with that. As we move on, you can also please place in the active listening strategies what you will work on. Place in chat one of the active listening strategies that you will work on over the next 30 days, just as an accountability support. Sometimes just saying it, or in this case, writing it, will hold us accountable to ourselves. Next slide, please. I see the chat lighting up. You clearly have some ideas and thoughts about what you want to work on. That's great. I encourage you to do that. You have my number or email in chat too at the end of the slides, actually. Please feel free to reach out to me anytime if you want to talk further about these. They're fun to have accountability partners for. Or with that being said, talk to each other. All right. So what we've seen so far is that language, agency, and listening results in trust. Trust creates a space where we both have the responsibility and the leverage to advocate for better systems, better interpersonal practices, and work to reduce internalized barriers to language access. You can see by now, I hope, that active listening is not soft skill work. It's outcome driven, equity centered practice. Next slide, please. Next, we will shift our attention to what happens around people versus in between people that we've been talking about up to now. Because no amount of good communication can overcome a system that is simply not designed for access. And we heard you all describing that in your scenario work. Next slide, please. These are symptoms of a system not designed for voices that heal. English forms and notices, again, you all called this out in your scenarios. Digital platforms that are not language responsive. They are predictable. And the good news is that means they are solvable. They require intentional design, not heroic effort. When bilingual clients struggle, it is rarely because they are disengaged. It is because systems have not been designed with them in mind. But they could be. Next slide, please. As I cover this slide, please take a moment to add other costs of inaction that you have experienced or ones you learned about in your scenario work in your groups. And, of course, react or comment to other people's examples as you see them pop up. These are not simply minor inconveniences. They directly affect recovery, engagement, and trust, resulting in a system that does not serve the people it aims to serve. take a moment to look at chat and see if there are any other costs of inaction that you all are thinking about. I either have a delay or you're all still thinking about the active listening activity, which is great. Incarceration, yes. Right? If we all acted on this, do you think we might see better overall community well-being indicators? Less incarceration, more employment, higher academic outcomes or greater academic outcomes? Exactly. Missed symptoms in the case of behavioral health. Lack of follow-through, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Next slide, please. So just a gentle reminder, advocacy is not confrontation. I hope you can see that individual practice is powerful and insufficient. You are positioned to name gaps, document impact, and push back. You've all been doing that in the chat all along. Language access in New Mexico is a civil rights issue, and for us, luckily, protected by our Constitution. Next slide, please. Admittedly, this is easier for some people than others. Remember, you do you. Do it authentically. Narrow your actions to one thing you can do and make that your mantra so you can practice it over and over and over with yourself, your peers, your patients or clients, your supervisors, your systems, or your civic engagement activities. For example, you always ask your clients about their heritage language when you first meet them, or you bring up increasing the clinic's budget at the meetings when you're discussing that every year, or you provide testimony based on your lived experience at a legislative hearing. Others, like myself, might be more inclined to dive in and make it a part of their DNA. Either way, using our voices to heal is part of an ethical, recovery-oriented practice. One change, as you all know too well, often means many lives impacted. That's the ripple effect we're talking about today. Next slide, please. When we affirm language in our work, we affirm people. And when people feel affirmed, they stay engaged. Next slide. Because we've used chat a lot in honor of our time, we're going to go ahead and skip this slide, but I would encourage you all to practice teach back and think about the actions you will take and the systems you will influence after our time together today. Next slide. The next few slides are a series of resources I've provided for you. I can tell everyone who showed up here today, you engaged, you were active, you participated. This matters to you. So I encourage you to go deeper, only in the ways that interest you. These are examples of organizations working in New Mexico, in the Southwest, and across our country to encourage healing and connection through language, everything we've been talking about today. Examples of ways you can go deeper include volunteering, attending an event, checking out their website, and telling others about them. You could make a donation, make a referral to them, and much more. But get engaged and get involved deeper if that is an interest of yours. Next slide, please. It was really important for us to talk about today about language as being organic, heritage, about having it okay to be curious, being culturally humble in our communications and connections. However, if this is piqued and emerging or longtime interest of yours to go deeper, I've put a resource here, El Cuento de Encuentros, that offers days and days long trainings that will allow you to do just that. As you see here today, this is an intense and deep conversation we clearly just scratch the surface of. And I am really proud to partner with Envive Solutions to bring you my passion in this conversation. They also have two references, our translators on the call today and people who helped me prep for this conversation. Really great to work with. Please know your resources in our community. Sometimes people go outside of our community for resources. We have amazing resources in our community. So voices that are HEAL are knowledgeable about our local resources. Please get to know them, share them in the ways that you can. Next slide, please. All right, what you see here are videos and other examples. Some are very, very short and some go longer. I encourage you to check them out. Educate yourself on the journey and decide for yourself how they support your practice. What you saw today was them through my lens. You can also share what you learned today with your colleagues. We solidify what we learn by teaching what we know. And in this way, we grow our communities of practice. Next slide. These are just some references for you about some of the data I shared earlier. I want to thank all of you for your participation. It was amazing to watch the chat blow up. I loved hearing your voices. I loved hearing the Spanish, the English, and I'm really grateful for your openness to participate and play with our language exposure today and be a little uncomfortable if you didn't always understand exactly what was being said and willing to roll with that. And my apology is for the slide that was not available in Spanish for those of you who needed that. Thank you for your time today, wonderful audience. With that, I will pass it over. Oh, I guess one more slide. You saw this, we've covered it all, and I hope that you will take away with you the barriers your clients face that you identified. You will practice the communication strategies that build trust, and you will implement the skills that center respect for bilingual identity that you practiced and demonstrated here today. Again, thank you. Have a great day.
All right, thank you, Anita. Before we wrap up, I want to just take a quick moment to thank you so much, Anita, for delivering another very valuable training. We also extend our gratitude to our colleagues at Voces de Vida for providing cultural broker services and to RGC Access for today's interpretation support. Kelly and Sandra, I really appreciate you both. You're fantastic human beings. Thank you for always being here to support us with these trainings. Most importantly, thank you all for attending and engaging with us today. And finally, I want to acknowledge BHSD Healthcare Authority for funding this workshop